Into the 1990s now, and we saw further legislation on the statute book, though it still struggled to keep up to pace with societal and technological changes. The National Lottery Act of 1993, which saw the first lottery draw itself taking place in 1994, it established the lottery that we know and love today, as well as relaxing the regulations under which lotteries operate in this country. I think it's fair to say that it's become an institution in the UK. It's raised billions and billions of pounds for good causes. In addition, it's paid out over £60 billion in prizes. And you'll remember, of course, in 2012, the National Lottery funding was one of the major contributors towards the cost of staging the 2012 Olympics and Paralympic Games that took place in London. Now, I think its success was an indication that the UK as a whole is a nation of gamblers and not just a small minority that's drawn to racecourses or betting shops. But this meant, in the 90s, the big bookmakers now had a task on their hands. The lottery was providing competition to what had previously been their monopoly. They needed to respond, but they also wanted a level legislative playing field upon which to do so. Now, of course, tapping into this public demand for the small stakes, high returns wagering, well, that had been around for many years with the football pools, but the lottery was instantly more accessible. It didn't require any knowledge of sport. Over the last 20 years, new lottery draws, scratch cards and such have been introduced as it has continually battled to compete with all the other cheap forms of entertainment. And of course the Chancellor takes an interest as well. Whilst over half of the ticket sales form the prize fund and 25% of it goes to good causes, 12% is levied in tax for the Exchequer. We move on to the 2000s and specifically the 2005 Gambling Act. Over the previous 10 years, successive governments saw the benefits of relaxing gambling laws, and really the 2005 Act came partly as a result for demands for fairness from the rest of the gambling industry, mainly casinos and bookmakers who were still subject to punitive restrictions. But in any event, the law needed a change. It needed to keep up with new technology, so a radical overhaul was proposed. And the Act brought great change. Here are some of the examples. It removed the membership requirement, you may remember, for casinos and bingo halls. And in fact, it removed the 24-hour waiting period that was a cooling off period for membership as well. More importantly for sports betting, it introduced a regulatory framework that had hitherto not existed for online and remote gambling within the UK. And it also gave the government the power and the gambling industry the responsibility to tackle problem gambling. Overall, the Act had the effect of expanding the consumer's choice of betting and gaming products and making protection measures an enforceable requirement. This hadn't been the case previously. Some of you remember the provision to permit the development of what we then called super casinos because it became the most contentious part of the bill. Many were promised up and down the land, but there was a great public backlash, and by and large the plan was shelved in 2008, and only one super casino was built in Stratford. And it's taken another 10 years for a couple of other medium-sized ones coming through in Milton Keynes and Birmingham. Moving back to sports betting, finally wagers were deemed to be enforceable at law, and it had taken 150 years for this to happen. Prior to the 2005 Act, overseas-based advertisers were allowed to offer and advertise internet gambling, though UK-based providers weren't, and so that was changed as well. And the Gambling Commission was formed, and its task was to regulate commercial gambling in Great Britain in partnership with all the various different licensing authorities. Now here's a point of contention. The B2 gaming machines, formerly known as fixed odds betting terminals, or FOBTs to you and I, they finally were regulated. They'd actually been in place for 3 or 4 years before, when they were introduced into the UK in 2001, and about 30,000 were already operating by the time the 2005 Act came into force. Nowadays, of course, there's a subject of much debate, and at the time of recording these videos in May 2018, their status is somewhat under threat.